5.
Thank you for doing that.
All right, everybody, please rise for the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call. Mrs. Gould. Thank you. Mr. Thompson.
Present.
Mr. Cabrera.
I am here. In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, those requirements have been satisfied as to the time, place, and date of holding said meeting by posting notice in the bulletin board in Borough Hall and by mailing and emailing saying to the Herald of Cape May County, the Gazette Leader, and the Press of Atlantic City on October 23rd, 2019. In the event of an emergency, the exit is your back right or your front left or our front right. Just a reminder, we are still operating under Executive Order 156. There is a cap on the size of the gatherings inside. It is 25% of the capacity of this particular room. This room holds 95. Means 24 people can attend personally here in the meeting. For the record, we have 14 in attendance. Again, that number is 14. If you want to access this meeting, you can call in on the conference line. That number is 234-203-2766. You're going to enter participant ID 786-394-836, followed by the pound or the hashtag sign. We will also be streamed live on YouTube and Facebook. If you have any questions, please give your name and your address for the record so our clerk can properly record your statement. Okay. Anybody has any questions that we're not able to get to here in the meeting, you're more than welcome to email the clerk at clerk@wildwoodcrest.org. I believe that handles all of our preliminary meeting announcements. Madam Clerk, may we have the ordinances?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm going to lower the elevator music. 1 second. That's a lousy thing.
Sit on that, block some of that sound because
Kleenex on. Put the Kleenex on.
necessity.
Right.
All right, we'll deal with it.
Is what it is, right? Okay, first we have is ordinance 1330, and it reads as follows. An ordinance amending and supplementing Chapter 61 Sewers of the Code of the Borough of Wildwood Crest, and incorporating Chapter 60 Sewerage as amended and supplemented herein into Chapter 61 of the Code of the Borough of Wildwood Crest.
I move that ordinance number 1330 be passed on first reading, advertised according to law, be brought up for second and final reading and public hearing on August 19th, 2020 at 5:30 p.m.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that ordinance number 1330 be passed on first reading, advertised according to law, be brought up for second and final reading and public hearing on August 19th, 2020 at 5:30 p.m.
Roll call. Mrs. Gould.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera.
Yes.
Next, we have ordinance 1332 for handicap parking, Chapter 79.
I move that ordinance number 1332 be placed on second reading and final passage by title only.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that ordinance number 1332 be placed on second and final reading by title only.
Roll call. Mrs. Gould.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera.
Yes.
Ordinance 1332 reads as follows. An ordinance repealing and replacing Section 79-7 handicap parking of Chapter 79 vehicles and traffic of the Code of the Borough of Wildwood Crest.
I move that a public hearing now be held on ordinance number 1332.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that a public hearing on ordinance number 1332 now be held.
Roll call. Mrs. Gould.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera.
Yes.
Hearing no comments from the public, I move that the public hearing on ordinance 1332 now be closed.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the public hearing on ordinance number 1332 now be closed.
Roll call. Mrs. Gould.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera.
Yes.
I move that ordinance 1332 be passed on second and final reading and advertised according to law.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that that ordinance number 1332 be passed on second and final reading and advertised according to law.
Roll call. Mrs. Gould.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera.
Yes.
Next, we have ordinance 1333, chapter 53, composition of police department.
I move that ordinance 1333 be placed on second reading and final passage by title only.
Second?
It has been moved and seconded that ordinance number 1333 be placed on second and final reading by title only.
Roll call, Mrs. Gould.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera.
Yes.
Ordinance 1333 reads as follows. An ordinance amending Chapter 53, Police Department, Section 53-4, composition of the Code of the Borough of Wildwood Crest.
I move that a public hearing now be held on ordinance number 1333.
Second?
It has been moved and seconded that a public hearing on ordinance number 1333 now be held.
Roll call, Mrs. Gould.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera.
Yes.
Hearing no comments from the public, I move that the public hearing on ordinance 1333 now be closed.
Second?
It has been moved and seconded that the public hearing on ordinance number 1333 now be closed.
Roll call, Mrs. Gould.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera.
Yes.
I move that ordinance 1333 be passed on second and final reading and advertised according to law.
Second?
It has been moved and seconded that ordinance number 1333 be passed on second and final reading and advertised according to law.
Roll call, Mrs. Gould.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera.
Yes.
Okay, that leads us to the resolutions. The first is authorizing notice to bidders for emergency medical billing 2020 to 2022.
So moved.
Second?
It has been moved and seconded that the foregoing resolution be adopted. Roll call, Mrs. Gould.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera.
Yes.
Next is authorizing approval of Borough Engineer Work Order for NJDEP Individual Permit Application for beach programming and improvements planned Phase 2, additional services at the not-to-exceed sum of $12,000.
So moved.
Second?
It has been moved and seconded that the foregoing resolution be adopted. Roll call, Mrs. Gould.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera.
Yes.
Next is promulgating rules and regulations for certain parks in the Borough of Wildwood Crest.
So moved.
Second?
It has been moved and seconded that the foregoing resolution be adopted. Roll call, Mrs. Gould.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera.
Yes.
Next is authorizing release of escrow fund for street opening permit number SO 19-0601 in the amount of $10.
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded that the foregoing resolution be adopted. Roll call, Mrs. Gould.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera.
Yes.
Next is authorizing release of escrow fund for street opening permit SO 19-0602 in the amount of $10.
So moved.
Second?
It has been moved and seconded that the foregoing resolution be adopted. Roll call, Mrs. Gould.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera.
Yes.
Next is authorizing the chief financial officer to void certain checks issued from the borough payroll account.
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded that the foregoing resolution be adopted. Roll call, Mrs. Gould.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera.
Yes.
Next is authorizing application refund of special event fee for a wedding to Vincent A. Bellardino.
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded that the foregoing resolution be adopted. Roll call, Mrs. Gould.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera.
Yes.
Next is authorizing refund of property taxes or utilities overpayment in the amount of $1,426.72.
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded that the foregoing resolution be adopted. Roll call, Mrs. Gould.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera.
Yes.
Next is authorizing refund of property taxes or utilities overpayment in the amount of $1,346.47.
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded that the foregoing resolution be adopted. Roll call, Mrs. Gould.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera.
Yes.
Next is canceling erroneous 2019 and 2020 sewer rents in the amount of $248 for property located at 103 East Stanton Road.
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded that the foregoing resolution be adopted. Roll call, Mrs. Gould.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera.
Yes.
Next is authorizing amendment to the 2020 municipal budget to account for additional funding from the Atlantic County Municipal Joint Insurance Fund Safety Incentive Program.
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded that the foregoing resolution be adopted. Roll call, Mrs. Gould.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera.
Yes.
Lastly is authorizing amendment to the 2020 municipal budget to account for additional funding from the Atlantic County Municipal Joint Insurance Fund Wellness Incentive Program.
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded that the foregoing resolution be adopted. Roll call, Mrs. Gould.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera.
Yes.
I move that all bills properly authorized be paid.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded that all bills properly authorized be paid. Roll call, Mrs. Gould.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Cabrera?
Yes. Okay, under correspondence, we have this employee recognition. We're going to table that until the next meeting here in August. We have dated August 22nd,
I think it's the
19th,
19th,
I'm sorry, August 19th,
5:30.
5:30 p.m. I think that's primarily with individuals from our beach patrol, correct?
Correct.
All right, so Madam Clerk, if you don't mind moving that to the next meeting.
Will do.
That brings us to our first round of public comments. We're going to start, it doesn't sound like there's anybody on the conference line other than the music. So we're going to go to anyone here in the audience first. If anyone has any public comments, please give your name and address and feel free to ask your question. Hearing none, we're going to move on to YouTube and/or Facebook. YouTube and Facebook.
There is one. Maria Steer, 109 East Nashville. She'd like to know if there's any plan for stopping the continued growth of our beaches.
Don's gonna stand there and hold that water.
So that's that question is probably best to be explained with the Army Corps dune, which we don't know when that's going to happen. We're thinking 2023, somewhere about that time frame. So when that project happens, where they take away the sand to build the new dune, will reduce the size of the beaches and stop the growth, from accreting temporarily at least. So it's going to be, a wait and see approach. But at the moment, right now, there's nothing that we can do. But I know when that dune happens, that is something that will at least for a period of time limit the growth of the beach. All right. Anybody else? All right, that ends the first round of public comments. We're going to move on to new business discussion. Commissioner Thompson, you have some comments on the Park Boulevard pumping station.
I did. I just wanted to get us a little on the same page, get up to date, get the residents up to date on where we stand. And it stems from the condition of Park Boulevard. Park Boulevard from, I would say, probably Lotus to at least Sweetbriar or Cardinal is getting really bad. A lot of ruts. A lot of the laterals that were put in are now starting to drop. And it's really bad. We're getting a number of complaints from neighbors, especially in the large trucks, and more specifically the landscaping trucks with their trailers. When they go over there, it makes a lot of noise, a lot of bangs. It's getting pretty bad. I use that street every day, and I try to avoid some of those blocks as much as I can with my truck also. So the question was, what can we do with Park Boulevard? It's been well over the last year or two that they're complaining about the condition of it, and it is getting worse. So the discussion was, do we do a mill and pave? But if we're going to do the sewer ordinance and ripping some of that up, I'd like to know a little more specifically when we think that may happen, if it's in that same area, and then further the mill and pave, should we look into that and see what the cost are years. But if this is realistically 2 years, 3 years, whatever, I would like to weigh that decision and see from Mark exactly where we are, what we think, and where those blocks are going to be, so that we can address the Park Boulevard issue as well as the pumping station and what will need to happen to make that occur.
So just remind everybody, so we have a FEMA grant application in, I believe, through Triad, correct? We're waiting for the decision on that. The last Congress had, although unofficial, that it looked positive, which was, Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, was a pumping station, was a new tide flex valves or valves to help get the water out, was some raising of the streets potentially, and if not that, then if there's going to be some direct ties or drainage changes, that would come with the milling and paving and perhaps all of Park Boulevard and definitely the street ends.
So the storm sewer master plan actually recommended 2 pump stations for that area. We filed a grant with FEMA for one of the pump stations. Just to remind everybody, there was a large submission that went into the state of New Jersey. The state of New Jersey, I believe, recommended a very small amount of applications. We were one of them that actually were recommended to FEMA to be funded. Prior to the world turning upside down, we were supposed to hear something in June or July of this year, and it was supposed to be favorable. So I'm assuming that that's going to be delayed because of the pandemic. So at this point, that application was for one pump station, the rerouting of storm sewer lines, and repaving of the roadways. It did not include roadway raisings, although we could look at that in conjunction with it. If we had gotten a favorable response in June or July, just to give you a baseline of time, the borough would have to budget that in the capital, which you do not have at this point. We would have to go through design, we would have to go through permitting. My guesstimate would be that the minute you're told that you have that grant, you're probably 2 to 3 years out.
And it was a $4 million that we were advised to stay under $4 million for our application, and the total project was over 8.
Yeah, because
So
it was two
there's a lot of-
pump stations.
There's a lot of in-house funding that we have to do in addition to the FEMA grant that we applied for, so it's not all free money. If we do get it, it's only gonna cover about half the cost.
So Mark, in your, I guess, so as we potentially look for that, is it safe to assume, and I just, to Commissioner Thompson's point about $1 million in paving, is it, I guess I'm trying to understand, would there, if we do the direct ties and any bulkhead raising and so forth, would there need to be milling and paving done anyway as part of that project on Park, or would this be separate? And
Yes.
would that work be isolated to the street?
Yeah, at that point, the road's gonna be hacked up pretty good, and that doesn't even get into talking about the sanitary sewer conditions. So once you start lumping all those items in as well as water, you're probably looking at a reconstruction potentially.
Could we at least, Commissioner, what was the street ends? What were the streets that you were looking at from where to where?
It seems to me that it originally was like really firm, but now a couple of deep and further back, and I would say probably Lotus to Sweetbriar.
Mark, could you put a cost estimate together just on a milling and paving, just so we have an idea of what that cost would be, and then the commissioners could consider if they wanted to do that? Just use your time frame. Let's just say it's 3 or 4 years down the road before that project actually gets started, because it would be a a short-term investment. Just would like to know what that short-term investment would be if we were to do a milling and pave, and then we can make a business decision based on what that cost is.
There is also very specific spots though. It's the laterals have been put in. There's a number of them. I don't know if we could cut those out and redo that as well. There's enough of them that it's an issue for that, because it's every block, but each one might have only 1 or 2. I don't know that we can just do
So if we're
those.
talking laterals, we're talking sanitary sewer, which would be in addition to the storm sewer numbers that we put together.
Yeah, some of them are that, some are just sections that were repaired that are just dropping in, I'm assuming from the water table. But I don't know that that would be an option to just cut those out and refill them for the time being, but.
I just had a thought while you were talking. So the next project after the county's done, we're doing our portion, and the county's done on Pacific Avenue. The county's made it clear that New Jersey Avenue is next. So New Jersey Avenue is going to require sanitary sewer and stormwater repairs, which is going to require us to do some work on the side streets, right? Heading down the park.
So the storm sewer's under their jurisdiction, so they have T&M working on the road, and the storm sewer sanitary would be us.
So maybe there's an opportunity there as well. So if not within the 4 years, again, because the next project, major project infrastructure is New Jersey Avenue, right? So maybe there's something we can do either in our current contract with Pacific Avenue or New Jersey, and maybe there are some areas that we could just do, just kind of bide some time without spending a lot of money.
So the project limits again for the mill and pave estimate was park from where to where?
Lotus to
Sweetbriar.
Sweetbriar.
Okay.
I'm gonna look and confirm it, but I think that's it. Captain, you have an ID right there. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, the real problem seems to be at like Forget-Me-Not and Palm. There's some real big.
So we would put together a mill and pave, which would basically address rideability. Like we're gonna basically take it up and put it back and make it rideable.
Right.
They're in front of Jellyfish.
So So if there were previous drainage issues, if there were previous infrastructure issues, they're gonna remain. It's gonna be nice and black and smooth.
Exactly, that would probably be done under all the whole sewer, sanitary sewer and storm sewer system when we get to all that. It's just, do we do this now or do we wait 3 more or 4 more years with it deteriorating worse? Because like Bob said, there are, Forget-Me-Not has gotten really bad, there's a big hole there now, and it just continues to get worse.
I mean, in a perfect scenario, we would like to evaluate if we could actually raise those roads too, but I guess we could fold that into the pump station project as part of the evaluation if and when we get to that point.
Yeah, if you know, just look at it and give us a recommendation, you know, either way, if something could be done now with raising, not that I know that it will, but at least keep an eye on that as you're looking and give us the estimate for a mill and pave. If it's something you think maybe we should consider, you know, we can be open to that, but it's probably best under the storm sewer.
Yeah, the street raising, that's a whole project right there, because now you're dealing with private property and raising
Yeah.
streets.
Yeah,
Last conversation I remember us having, we were trying to stay away from that. I think what we are interested in raising the bulkheads.
Yes, but I will say this though, I think we can raise some of your roadways.
I think there's a little bit of room there.
I believe you can raise your roadways without negatively impacting the property owners. I think you could raise the roads probably even higher, but then you would start to do that, which would require coordination. So I'm not gonna abandon the fact that I think you still can raise your roads, but maybe not as high as we want to due to the private property issue.
Yeah, we need to do a survey of the area, right?
We would have to do a detailed survey where we would have to basically identify if we were gonna raise a road and say your house was there, we would see the steps, we know that those steps would be impacted, we'd have to get on the property, shoot the steps, shoot the garage slabs, it would get in depth, but it might be, in my opinion, when you get to that point, well worth it, if you get your street up.
So I think the milling, I think we need to get your set of eyes and engineering eyes on the subject area that Commissioner Thompson raised. Maybe you can put together, maybe get together with the captain and figure out which are the worst areas there that we have issues. I think we have possible change order opportunity with current projects that we have going on now and or starting in the future to get us by until we do the major project, either with New Jersey Avenue or when we do the triangle.
If you care, we can take a ride through my truck, not your car. My Lincoln rides through there fine, okay? It's the trucks. And the trucks are causing all the complaints from the neighbors because they ride them very differently and hit them a lot harder.
Okay.
And you actually get to see the condition of that road when you're riding in a truck.
All right, Madam Clerk, can we can we take this topic, can we refer to it Park Boulevard Mill and Pave and slide it under our old business, please?
Can do.
All right, next item under new business is family reunion. I think, so family reunions and wedding receptions. I just want to make sure we all understand. So right now, our licensing clerk for permitting, Loretta, who's here with us today, she's advised we, the borough, do not issue permits for reunions or wedding receptions on our beach, even though the family or whoever is holding the event may very well handle, everything from the rental tents and chairs and tables, soup to nuts, without, maybe just some trash cans and so forth from the borough. And I think the primary reason, as I understand it, is because potentially people could bring alcohol to these events. So set alcohol off to the side for a second. Do we want, this is just me talking now. I can't think of a better opportunity that for someone to celebrate Wild Crest and our beach and important, occasions and families' lives is to have, if they wanted to have these on the beach. Now, if our permitting says no alcohol, which is basically what our beach ordinance already says, I don't personally see an issue with it, but unless I'm missing something, if they come down and they set up, it certainly wouldn't be during mating hours. Would be, at a time frame where there's, away from bathers and in an area on the beach, away from, what I'll call, where people are laying out. So I'll throw that out there. I'm interested to hear everybody's comments.
Okay, when this letter originally came, this email came, I answered the gentleman right away. and I said to him, I showed Loretta the email that I sent back to him. I told him that we do not allow tents, tables, chairs on the beach, and we do not have the facilities to put 100 to 500 people on the beach for a reunion in our already overcrowded beaches. As big as our beaches are, they're still really crowded. I mean, I know this summer is kind of an off summer. Last summer, I think they estimated 4th of July weekend, I think they said something like 5,000 people were on each beach, 4,000 people, some astronomical number. I'm going to tell you right now, don't say no alcohol, because that's not in the mix. There's always going to be alcohol in the mix. There's alcohol on the beach now. We know people drink beer on the beach. You know, there's red Solo cups, don't hold Pepsi-Cola. So it's just that it is what it is, and that's the flavor of this town, is that there's no alcohol. It's a family town. If they want to drink, they can go to the Crest Tavern to buy alcohol, they can go to Green's to buy alcohol. But we're right smack in the middle, and we don't have it, and I don't really think that many people really want to have it. And we've had weddings on the beach, they do their ceremony, they take their pictures, and then they go to a reception. It's very easy, it's very clean, it's done within a half an hour, and it works out really well, my opinion. Alcohol is always there.
My issue is this, and I tend to agree with Joyce on that. I also tend to agree with Don somewhat. I hate telling people no to everything. I just do. The alcohol on the beach, if you're going to bring 200 people, I don't even get up to 500, you're going to have alcohol. It's going to be a mess. There's always those that abuse it, that are going to drink, get out of control. Ron would certainly have to weigh in on this, because I would really value his opinion as far as the alcohol in there. I think the flip side too is when they talk about these reunions and parties, they're not aware of how that sand blows and what it'll do. I got creamed yesterday with the sand. Now that's an extreme situational, but even on a regular weekday, a little bit of breeze or sand and whatnot. My issue would be the alcohol and controlling it and getting out of hand and the liability. I would love to say yes and let people do them, but I'm well aware of the abuses that people do, again with taking the alcohol on the beach. For me, I think the whole issue is the alcohol. If this were to be allowed, I would say it would be the back beach only. It wouldn't interfere with people down at the water's edge. It would have to be our back beach only. We've got enough area there for it. Parking's going to be an issue, whatever street they're going to try and get down and all, so it does have its issues, but the alcohol is the big one. I just don't see how you get around that. And Ron, if you would weigh in as far as that, what your thought process is on it.
I would look into, I don't see any reason why we couldn't permit the consumption on public property by way of a permit. These type of events, Captain Lloyd will tell you, these motels fill up with very large events where they have alcohol. They are contained on private property, so it's a little easier. So the fact that you're having events with large number of people consuming alcohol is not something new to the borough. It's an ongoing thing every summer. So the issue just becomes, I think you pointed out, what regulations do you want to place on it? After hours, confined area, to the back beach, within a certain time period, and then we can look into the liability issues for having such events on public property. That's the big difference, is permitting it on public property. But obviously no sales of alcohol, but I don't think that's the case with weddings. Would have to be brought by the people and provided to the guests free of charge. So there's a couple things to look into, and I can get back to the commissioners with a more detailed response.
I agree. We have the large parties at the motels, and I don't have a problem with that. It's their property, their liability. The issue is the liability on the city. If we can get around that, then it would be something to discuss.
So I need to go back to my original statement to say, not during bathing hours, so bathing hours ends at 5:30, right? So it would be after 5:30 or before the lifeguards go in at, say, 10 o'clock, in fact were the case. To the point where, listen, I was not tying it into that one particular email, just the general concept of the borough not allowing permits for weddings and family reunions. To me, that is about as Wildwood Crest as you can get in terms of having a staple, momentous occasion, promoting our beaches and on our beach. I
But we
said
do have permits for weddings, just not the
wedding
receptions.
receptions on the beach. I don't see anything wrong with that. Again, not during the evening hours and after hours. And the alcohol, as far as that's concerned, if we're gonna take such a hard stance on that, I think that we're at a point now where we say, hey, then what's the point of having the license potentially in the business district, possibly at the hotels and the motels? People get married here at every gazebo on the beach now, but they can't have a reception in Wild Crest. It makes no sense. We're sending business out of the Crest. So again, I will reiterate that I wish we would get our minds away that people are drinking on the beaches or in Wildwood Crest. They are. And as fast as we can get our hands on that and understand it and appreciate that, people are being respectful. One thing we didn't learn during COVID was this. People can eat outside on sidewalks under tents. We're seeing that. We are over-regulated, and people are here on vacation, and all we do, to Commissioner Thompson's point, is say no. If this is a safety issue and it goes through a whole sign-off process, then we'll address it at that time. If it's too many people, we say no. But for a small little gathering, they're doing that now on the beach, hundreds of people.
Yeah, but Don, this email that came, I forgot to mention that the guy said, I'll be the DJ. So then you got music with 100 to 500 people. After 5:30, they start to drink, they go to the beach, they go into the water, there's no guards, people start drowning. I mean, you know, you have to understand, then you know what, Don? Make sure you get your referendum and it goes to a vote to whether people want alcohol in the town or they don't want alcohol in the town. And then it's over. Then you've got your answer.
Well, the people will speak on that particular. That's not my referendum. That is a referendum designed to provide economic development in a dilapidated business area. And for hotels and motels to have an opportunity to have a better season than just 2 months out of the year, and to give vacationers and residents an opportunity to go have a drink and get something to eat in Wild Crest without sending them to Cape May and North Wild and Wild. That's what the referendum's about.
My issue still is only the liability to the borough, because I don't have a problem with the after-hours party there. It's all just liability to us. I mean,
I think that you also need to weigh in how much service you can provide these people, because if you have, let's say, a big family reunion of 500 people, obviously these people are going to get fed, right? And they're going to have chairs, they're going to have a tent. The tent obviously would have to be, the person who erects the tent company would have to provide us with a certificate of insurance. In addition to the person who's having the party giving us the certificate of insurance. If this gentleman's the DJ and he's going to use electric power, things like that, speakers, he has to provide a certificate of insurance. So all the different people that they deal with have to provide us with their insurance. Because if something happens and it's born out of their equipment, the injury occurs because of their equipment, they would have to insure. The other problem, that can be handled. The problem I see, because I grew up in an area that did things like this, and there's always people who do a little bit more than you expect them to do. If you give them an inch, they take a foot. So say they have a nice barbecue pit, you know, and they barbecue themselves, but they bring down all of their equipment and they barbecue. When they dispose of the coals, a lot of times people will just dig a hole and bury the coals. Then the next day, the sand is hot. Little child or people walk on the coal, on the hot sand, burn their feet. There's just so many things. Someone would have to be there during cleanup to make sure that everything has been properly disposed of and it's a safe environment upon conclusion of the event. The beginning of the event, someone would have to be there to make sure they're in the right place they're supposed to be and they're not overstepping and going down into the area where, you know, people are sitting and being disruptive, things of that nature. During the event, the police would probably have to be patrolling continuously because it may get too loud and you may get a lot of noise complaints. They may do things like, you know, shoot off fireworks or, you know, all different types of behaviors. So you just have to make sure that we have the adequate staff, but be it Public Works, the police department, recreation, off-duty, off-hours people that can handle these things. Because you can't just leave it unmanned. You can't just say no one needs to be there. That's not going to be the case when you're talking about 500 people.
But, I don't think you need to look far. For example, you could look at Icona and Diamond Beach, where they have on-beach facilities. They have a tent, they have some decking, they have some palm trees, they have a little gazebo-type structure where the ceremony occurs. It all seems to be fairly well contained. It's located on the beach. Maybe you're looking for an example, rather than pondering, 500-person events that are out of control and mayhem. Look at an example that's already in practice for a facility that's fairly well under control. And we can look to duplicate something like that in a specific area, confined with all of the controls our administrator just suggested could be issues.
And any necessary staff, and correct me if I'm wrong, we have in our permitting fees that get charged, and so if they need police or public works or whatever, they pay for it. Right, it's not like we provide it for free, they would pay for it.
Now, this email that did come in that spurred this did say 100 to 500 people. I think 500 is a lot of people for one family. You could be picking up bodies, you had 500 people in one family, in one party. So I think realistically, you're talking much smaller numbers for the majorities for your little wedding receptions and your family reunions. So 500 is extreme.
Maybe there's a cap, that's what I'm saying, maybe cap it at 100, 150, 200.
Possibly even half of that. But I don't think you'd be getting a whole lot of requests for 500 people. Short of somebody want to pay some money and do some kind of event now that they're getting smart. Hey, I'll do this on the beach, I'll advertise, I'll get people, blah, blah, blah. But we can control that with numbers. But I don't think you're going to be seeing great big numbers of requests there. I think the 500 has skewed this a little bit, this conversation that he put on here.
Yeah, so I can tell you, when I get down there in that beach at nighttime, there's people pitching tents, there's people getting together, 50, 75, having fun, but they're not getting crazy, they're enjoying the
But
beach.
it's not an
at times.
organized event. I mean, it happens in every beach town. It's not an organized event where you're saying, come here, invitations are going out, come here at 5 p.m., we're going to have a dance party, we're going to have a DJ, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. It's a different type of venue. These are people who are looking for a free venue, right? A place where they can't have it in their backyard because it's too many people. They don't want to go to a catering facility because it's too expensive. So they're looking for a place where they can do it with these large numbers, perhaps. So you just have to be mindful of that. That they don't want to do it at their own property. They don't want to do it maybe at the Cape May County Park and Zoo where they have the pavilions and they allow it because they're not allowed to have alcohol. Who knows? But those type of numbers in an organized event can be pretty expansive. And 500 people would be a lot. And I'm sure Bob would have some serious concerns about how to manage something like that with his department.
It would be very difficult. We would definitely have to take each situation and determine what we would need for each. With 500 people, I agree with Commissioner Thompson. I think that you're not going to see too many events with 500 people out on the beach. I don't know though. If we allow it, I would have to take a look at each one and determine how many officers we would need, if any.
I suggest we let Ron look into the liability issue and we can revisit it. As I think that's going to be the big thing.
Yeah, I like to be practical whenever we make decisions.
Well, we have the guidelines, Loretta has them, the insurance guidelines on having events like this on public property. We have
How
all
many
that.
receptions and family reunions would there possibly be throughout the year? 5? 10?
Way more.
3?
Kidding me?
Yeah, we
Could be,
If we allow it, there'll be tons. You don't know how many requests they get. I mean, especially now with COVID and people are doing stuff outside. I get wedding requests like every week I get some.
Receptions?
Well, they would if they could, but we've never allowed it. So that would be the thing too, to me, there'd be the possibility of having something going on, like 10 different spots on the beach, there's a lot of people that would want to do this.
Well, not if we kept track of it and schedule it, different days.
And we could pick certain locations too to make them available, not just any street they want it on.
Well,
Make
but
it
they usually do
certification.
want a particular street,
Right.
but their
Well, that's
family's
the
been for
thing, then
years.
you'd be
and
favoring certain hotels over others
Exactly.
because that's the only thing I was
You're
thinking.
staying at a motel, you wanna
I
have
was
it on
more
that
thinking,
street.
I was more thinking off of the parks where there is no motel directly in front of it. If we wanted to do something there, just think that would be our area. you know, Lotus or, so you're not in front of individual motels. And see how it goes. It's still a liability issue with me. I would revisit it when Ryan comes back with what he can find and get a suggestion. Like Connie said, we have the guidelines for doing it. We can incorporate that all into it.
And there are guidelines for inclusion of alcohol and there are guidelines for exclusion of alcohol. There are two different ways to handle it, and it's all in the guidelines that are provided by
So
the
as far as
Atlantic
I'm,
County
it could be an
Municipal
exclusion
Service.
of alcohol, as far as I'm concerned, it can be. I'm not saying it has to be, but if that's, at the end of the day, if that's it, my point is, and I'll say it for the third time, is we have the best beaches. Folks, when they get their pictures taken and they say we were in the Crest Beaches, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's what through this whole COVID problem, if we did learn one thing, it's socializing outside, it's getting back together with family, it's utilizing public spaces, it's all of that. And it just seems like we find reasons not to, as opposed to, let's find out reasons how we can make it work within our parameters and what we can do as a municipality. That's the mindset I think we should be taking. So that's my,
And
that's my soapbox.
that's not a bad mindset, but I tend to disagree with the fact that there will definitely somehow be alcohol. Even though as we tell you there's no alcohol, I guarantee you there'll be alcohol there. It has to be. It's just part of life, that's all. It's just part of life. Who doesn't have a glass of wine at dinner every night? I mean, practically everybody.
That's my point, exactly.
You do it in your own home. You're not doing it outside unless you're at a restaurant that serves alcohol.
We know, listen, let's be honest, let's not hide under a rock. We know people are drinking on the beach. We know people drinking when they go see the concerts. We know that they're driving around in their beach cruisers having a good time. We know they're at Sunset Lake at the ship. We know that. Why are we hiding from it?
But they're controlled. They're not at a party. They're not up there going slightly crazy with music. Yeah, you know what, Don, this is the same question that happened, it's constant. Is Wallow Crest going to be dry, or is Wallow Crest not going to be dry? What do the people that live here want it to be? And that will have a referendum. That's what it'll be.
That's for sales. Right? All right, so can you slide it under old business?
Yes, sir.
And I guess we'll allow Solicitor Galzunis and the public to weigh in on it. That brings us to old business. Bulkhead ordinance, lot grading, flood mitigation efforts, that's on hold. That's part of the stormwater master plan. I guess as soon as whatever happens here with this code, we've got to get back on track on this. Put that project behind schedule. Old Library, that presentation from Mr. de Blasio and Mr. McLeese is formally scheduled for October 23rd, right? Second meeting in October.
Mhm.
Referendum permitting one consumption liquor license in the business zone, we just briefly touched on that, nothing happening with that. Street opening ordinance, I believe, is there anything we need to do with this? I believe this is a non-issue now, we yank it. All right, beach bump outs, this is for south of Rambler, for the DEP. I understand we have a meeting today with the state to address their questions and the delineation of the potential dunes and so forth. We're going to go over all that with them. Okay. Dogs on the beach, nothing on that. Beach walkway, so I haven't had a chance to get to the beach yet out there, but I'm curious to see how our test mattings held up during Tropical Storm Isaias. So we'll report back on that.
That's how you say it. How do you say it? Not Isaiah.
Isaias.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
I thought it was Isaiah.
No, in the Bible. Believe me, this wasn't in the Bible.
All right, so just so before we go into our last round of public comments, I just want to let the public know who are watching in the room. We are very much aware that there are power outages in Wildwood Crest. Atlantic City is first clearing branches and trees from the street and off the poles before they can start working on them. It could be as late as Friday or Saturday of this week for them to be fully restored. We're hoping for the best. Hopefully they'll get their crews here to do what they need to do. But I don't know if anybody's received any emails or comments. I know I've been getting bombarded with texts and emails and so forth. That is where it's at. Don't have an answer, and Atlantic City is working on it. I will also go as far as to say that I did, I think There are areas in the borough, particularly south of Rambler along Atlantic Avenue, that appears to me, unofficially without documentation, but just knowing what I know, seems like we have a problem in that grid, in that area. So I'm going to be asking Atlantic City Electric to address, to see what needs to be addressed in the infrastructure to stop this from happening. A lot of hotels and motels and condos and houses there that are without power. So this is not, I think the last time it happened was back in May or June. We all, and just, we are aware of also damage as a result of tropical storm.
Isaias.
That's the vote.
Acai.
You
Isaias.
know, I never met anybody with that first name. I don't know if it's a female or a male. What's the gender of it? There's no gender.
It's gender neutral. We don't know how it identifies. We have to ask.
Discussion for whole business.
Yeah, so anyway, so we're aware, there has been, Brian has done a nice job getting information out regarding, we had the beach boxes, they took a little bit of the hit upside down. We're gonna move anything that was left laying as a result of an open box back to the recreation center, the Crest Pier. We're aware that the Little League field roof blew off. We're aware that there's a lot of down trees and fencing and so forth. We're aware the tennis court fencing has blown off in Upland and bent in some areas. That's about it as far as I know. I know that all of our insurance issues are being directed to Loretta and Trish, so there's proper insurance claim coverage coming forward.
Jester will be here by the end of this week.
Yeah, Friday.
I just want to remind everybody, on Rambler, Seaview, Atlantic, and Ocean Avenue, our traffic lights are still out. So there are stop signs dropped for east and westbound traffic. So please be mindful of that. Also at Farragut and Atlantic, the traffic light is out there. So your east and westbound traffic are going to have a stop sign there as well. We still do have a few power lines down in town that are being guarded by law enforcement officers. So if you see an officer on a traffic post, they're likely guarding a live power line right now. So please don't walk around them or try to skirt around them and go around the house to go take pictures or get near the lines, because they are dangerous and life-threatening. And last I heard from Atlantic City Electric, they have 13,000 open tickets in our region, so it's going to be some time. So, like the mayor said, we are aware of it. Just please be careful moving around the island right now.
Okay, and that's the last issue. So I'm getting a lot of emails regarding the sand along the ocean front, blowing over the bulkheads into the street end and then the hotels and motels. So we're going to do the best we can to try to get that sand removed off the bulkhead. I'll be in touch with Public Works on that. All right, that wraps up old business, new business, and general discussion. We'll pass around the public comments. We'll start with anybody in the room. All right, we're going to move on to, there's nobody on the call. In fact, I guess I can't say something. YouTube or Facebook?
There are a few, sir. Terry Meyer, 137 West Sweetbriar. She said, Sweetbriar Road, this is just a comment, Sweetbriar Road is in definite need for a drainage fix. She's happy to hear that Sweetbriar Road is part of the plan that you discussed earlier.
You're in trouble now.
All right, a couple questions. There's two from the same person. They're kind of related, so I'll read both. Paul Tipkins, Hipkins, 5704 Lake Road. He says, on the corner of Heather and Lake is a small borough lot. It has a dead tree on it, and the grass is never cut, and it's an eyesore. Wants to know who is responsible for the lot maintenance. And then the second question was, parking on the 5700 block of Lake Road is minimal. In front of 5710 Lake Road is a handicap parking sign. The person for whom the parking spot was for is no longer with us. Can the handicap sign be removed?
Okay, so as far as the Heather and Lake Road, I'm not aware, we have we own property there. So
It's an empty lot, is that what they're saying?
He's saying that it's a small borough lot. I live right around the
Yeah,
corner.
they've been
I don't think
privately
it's
owned,
borough lot.
I'm not aware that
It's
borough.
not a borough lot.
That's my
No,
house.
so can we check the tax record just to double check that?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. As far as the, what was the other one?
The
Brian?
handicap
parking
Handicap.
on that
So
street.
I believe the ordinance that we just passed on second reading will address that, but I know Commissioner Thompson and Captain, you guys have that noted and
I will look into that one specifically. We're doing a audit of everyone in town, but I'll look into that one right now. And
Okay.
In the new handicap ordinance, we are requiring that everybody with a handicap parking spot will reapply, if you will, in January, or at least reconfirm that the situation still exists. Those that do not, we will be paying a visit, check, and see. Just to stop this, there was another house, the handicap sat there for 3 years, because somebody died and they just didn't bother to report it. So every January, during the month, they're going to have to reach out, let us know the conditions still exist, who they are, and then we'll be addressing this every year. Because the problem is, there was nothing in place to address this situation as to whether or not they're still necessary. So we did take care of that in this new ordinance.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Knapp?
Yes, this one's a long one. Tracy Blanda, 103 West Myrtle. Is there any plan to do anything about the flow of traffic down Park Boulevard from Lotus to Rambler, where it narrows, particularly Lotus to Myrtle? When cars are parked on Park Boulevard in this block, anyone traveling south veers into the northbound lane to get around parked cars and sometimes bicyclists. Cars use West Myrtle Road as a quick cut-through to continue north on Park Boulevard and avoid the lights on New Jersey Avenue, all while cars are proceeding southbound in the northbound lane. It's a very dangerous area. Is there a possibility of making a no left turn off of New Jersey at Myrtle, maybe even May to October only, to avoid the volume of cars using both West Myrtle Road and that block of Park Boulevard that is very narrow?
I know exactly what she means, because everybody does it. Just to avoid that light. That's maybe not a bad idea, to make it a no left turn from May to October.
It would eliminate a lot of the traffic during that time. I don't know that I'd be opposed to a no left turn during the summer months.
Where's the left turn out?
On New
Primrose.
Jersey,
New Jersey.
going down, New Jersey.
Sure.
Going
Heading
south on New
south.
Jersey, it's left on Primrose.
But it's-
Going north.
The other way, north.
North is
North.
not.
North
You
on
pass
New Jersey.
Primrose,
Yeah.
you get to Myrtle, and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
you're
Going
left.
down the park.
Right,
It's a
we-
short street.
Yeah, but we addressed that last year, part of it. So what happened was, if the light is no longer blinks, it's not a stop sign.
Yeah, they no longer have to avoid that.
Right, so
They just don't want any traffic going down there because there's a lot, and it is a short street. Since the issue was raised when the light was there and all, that there's not letting it go, I don't, there's probably not as much traffic now as there was. We'd have to maybe confirm what's there, but it's still the same issue. It's like any traffic going down there and that right-hand turn. So, I mean, people make it. We have no accidents, we haven't had anything happen, but their concern is they think it's dangerous, something might. But to date, nothing has happened.
Just small children.
Yeah, you can make one way run these.
Yeah, I remember, so one of the things, so before Chief McGrath retired, he had worked with Ralph Grassi to get that light turned off. And the left-hand turn, I believe there was some signage that was added on Myrtle Road as well as some street paint. So I'm not sure.
I don't think we have anything street or anything done there.
Yeah, that's the last, I mean, I remember that's what he had
We can
before.
look at
So
those emails, I
maybe-
recall all
Yeah,
that.
there's actually a left turn lane there as you're coming out of New Jersey, or out of the lake area with all the new striping. You can stay in the right lane and go straight, but there's a turn lane for people going to make that turn. I don't know if that's contributing to it or not either, if it were just straight. That left turn lane striping may be contributing to people turning.
It invites the cars to turn
I think
in.
that's-
I mean, having that arrow in the road
Yeah,
says,
probably
turn
inviting some
here.
of that traffic.
But I mean, that it would just move the traffic to Lotus.
At least Lotus is a
It's a
two-way
two-way
wide
road.
street.
Yeah,
Right.
it's a much
And
wider
at Park
street.
Boulevard, at Park Boulevard.
It's not as
it's
narrow on Park, so
Correct.
making that right would be easier.
Yeah.
All right, so you guys want to take a look at that?
Yes, sir. Take a look. Like the commissioner said, I don't think I'd have to look into it, but I don't think we've had any accidents or any issues there. quite some time, so, I mean, I'm not saying that it's not dangerous, but we'll
Why?
take a look at it.
So I know that I had on that similar comment, but we also have some issues potentially from Lake where it intersects with Rambler. I met with Mark de Blasio there, and when New Jersey Avenue when the county's doing pressing down New Jersey to Rambler, that's their property, their street. So we may need to reline the street in a different way, which I know is part of that picture. So maybe there's something short-term we can do until we get to that point where, because remember, it's dropping down to one lane.
Right, so they may be able to add some like parking, bump it out a little bit, make it safer that way.
Yeah. So I guess there's a short-term fix, and then Mr. de Blasio and County Engineer Church will
Yeah.
look at the traffic flow when we get closer to that time frame. Okay?
No, I was just gonna say, the problem is the 6900 block there, Lotus, where it cuts narrow, once the cars park there, she is right, the cars have to be on the other side of the lane because it's so narrow. The only way you're gonna alleviate it is no parking on that Lotus.
That was
side.
exactly what I was gonna say, is just
No
remove
parking
the
on that side,
parking
you don't
on the
have a
west
problem,
side.
but right now you do, and Rondo, she lives down there, they have to get over that lane.
I have a lot of suggestions.
Yes.
I was self-serving too.
But that is the problem there when you come down to Park
Some
Boulevard.
suggestions.
Yeah,
But remember-
I've been observing it for,
Remember the street that Ron lived on when it went east, that one
Correct.
block before, then they built the barriers, and that was another way to get out of it faster, to get the traffic out, so. We
Yeah,
should make this like Mackinac Island, just horses, carriages and horses, no cars at all.
If I could, having used that street, and I think what Ms. Bland's biggest complaint about that street, I think one of the biggest issues is everyone who uses that little cut through at Myrtle is well aware that there's not supposed to be, obviously you never know what might happen. There's no traffic coming from southbound.
Correct.
So they come down the bottom of that street and they do not stop. Because it's just a quick look to make sure a cyclist isn't coming. And then I think the potential for the accident comes, there is no stop, which then makes them do a wide turn. And if there are cars parked on the west side, or if there are cyclists coming up, you have cars traveling southbound on Park that are way over that yellow line. I walk that way, I bike that way a lot. There are multiple near misses of accidents there. There may not have been an accident yet, or one recently. I have seen multiple near misses there. And I think that is the major issue, is people do not stop at that stop sign because they know there's no oncoming traffic. It's just a quick look, they slow down, and then they turn, and they don't know what they're turning into because people coming southbound are avoiding the cars and the cyclists that may be on the west side of the road. I think that's the major issue at that intersection.
Brian and Adam, nobody stops at a stop sign. Nobody stops. I get to a stop sign and somebody's the other way and I blow my horn. Whereas people go right through red lights, right on Rambler and New Jersey, though, right through Rambler and Pacific. They went right through a red light. I'm stopped there and I'm pointing up. I'm not giving the finger, I'm pointing up. There's a light. And nobody stops at a stop sign. It's like they're passe.
Well, it might have been, but
No, I don't do that.
all right. So how about Captain? If you don't mind taking a look, maybe the rough route crossing, maybe with Engineer de Blasio, maybe with solicitor, however we can get to it. But I know that the stop and watch time has changed. I had thought that there was some additional signage placed there. But maybe it sounds like the issue maybe is how we get them to fully stop.
I have an idea.
All right. Yeah. Put an armed police officer there. All right, what else you got, Brian?
Steve Vicario, 7703 New Jersey Avenue, says he's been asking about having power lines underground. Would like to know if there's an update on that.
Millions. That's why Stone Harbor has those awful, awful poles, because they couldn't put them under there. The salt water would eventually eat everything up underneath, even the casings, whatever it's in. Salt eats
Groundwater's
everything.
hotter than it ever was, so.
Brian, was there a specific location, or is that just a general?
That was just a general question, didn't give us a specific location. No.
Okay, yes, I believe, Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, that the borough would have to pay for that, if I'm not mistaken, right? So that's not something that a private property owner would pay for.
Well, you can require new construction to go underground, but it would only be new properties that you would be having do that. They've done it in other towns where they grandfather it in, but it doesn't eliminate poles, it only eliminates from the house to the pole. You still need the poles. There's no way for the distribution of the power without having the poles. So you don't eliminate poles, you eliminate a few. But
So you
the
could-
underground is a problem because when you want to maintenance it, you have to dig it all up. So it's very costly to the homeowner if you do it. I can tell you that firsthand. I know that because I had to dig my property up last year to find a little issue. Dave will remember that.
You had our own concert.
It can be done, but it doesn't
Oh, yeah,
eliminate
right.
poles.
Start drilling in the next year or something.
You want to elaborate?
Anybody else?
Couple more, actually, Tracy Blanda, responded to the commentary about what's going on at Myrtle Park. She said that a stop was painted on West Myrtle. And she says, while appreciated, it didn't help much.
Okay.
And then the last question that I have on here is, Kristen Vasallo, 8605 New Jersey Avenue. Are there any plans to get solar speedometers near the business district by Sal's Suncrest Fish Factory, a little cafe area? Cars go way too fast in that area.
Right, so there probably are a couple areas that we've talked about here, but I think we probably need to do an assessment of those areas here in the all-season plan financially and budgetarily for next year. I know that is one of the areas. I know there are some areas on New Jersey before you get to Sunset Lake as well. There was some discussion along Park before, and what I had heard at the time is that people were concerned about the blinking lights and too much lights into their windows and so forth, and was making it worse, so we kind of took our back seat on it. But if that's something that we need to look at, I think that the police department is best suited to advise us where those areas would be. And I think if we could ask the captain to put that on his list for after-season review, it would be great and plan for next year. That's it?
I have a list.
We have a big list. Okay, that wraps up all public comments. Commissioners, you have any general comments before we accept the motion for adjournment?
I do. I just wanted to commend our police department and our rescue department for the work they did yesterday with this storm. I know they were busy and running like crazy. I think we got our money's worth out of Central Dispatch yesterday. They were swamped. It was non-stop. But we had some hazardous conditions, a lot of wires down, some light poles down, and I know we brought in extra police officers during the event. So I suppose it was a job well done to our police department and rescue as well. It was a big effort that they took.
Right, I think generally across the board, police department, fire company, EMS, recreation was out taking care of the beach boxes, public works was out picking everything up across the board. I mean, listen, I can't say enough. We're such a small municipality, but everybody in the borough through these storms and through COVID has just done a great job. I feel like I've been run over by a truck 100 times, but get a good nice sleep and we'll pull up our bootstraps and then we'll get back at it.
Chief, how many calls yesterday at the fire company?
15.
Okay, that's a volunteer fire company, 15 calls yesterday. Manned every one. So again, goes out to the fire company as well.
And they were quick.
It's
They're right on top of it.
The problem is that the temperament, the attitudes, just the rudeness that's out there is just, it's overwhelming. I can't stress enough, you really just gotta, I catch myself doing it, so I apologize if I've been rude and obnoxious.
Just think of all the people who've never seen a hurricane before who were able to see it. Look at that, they didn't
I
have
got
to
to
see
see
it.
tornadoes. I got to see tornadoes.
A little
Firsthand.
bit of everything. Listen,
Captain,
this is gonna be a big year for hurricanes. They've already had 7 named storms. The next one is Josephina.
we can pronounce that one.
Just be prepared because
Isaias.
Is that what it is? Yes.
There you go.
Captain, how did Central Dispatch do?
All right.
This was a true test, right?
There were struggles, but they handled themselves very well. It was, everybody in emergency services yesterday was stretched thin, so I mean, they did the best they could with what they had, and they got us to every call for service. It was, I'm sure, very difficult for them. Every time they were on the radio, I heard the phone ringing in the background, so there was
No rest.
no way to do it other than just handle the calls as they came in and dispatch them as they could. But it was difficult, but everybody worked well together. And Public Works and Recreation, like the mayor said, were out there, and Public Safety was out putting up stop signs and 65 and 70 mile an hour winds on the back of trucks and everything. So everybody did an amazing job yesterday. Everybody.
Well, I gotta thank the volunteers as well at the fire company. They actually stayed at the firehouse, instead of come home and wait for calls. They just manned the firehouse, gave up their time, stayed there, and that's why they were so quick. They were already in the firehouse and just responded immediately to the calls. So they gave up the time of their day to be there during that whole event.
Having that immediate response was great because it helped us clear our officers to get to other calls, and it was very helpful. So, thank you.
Okay,
Bravo.
can I have a, entertain a motion
So
for?
moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
10:36 and 14 people in the room.